Everyone, welcome back to Bold Like a Leopard. And I know I haven't been doing many videos simply because I've been working on other stuff. So this video is an update and some commentary on the week. So if you haven't watched it already, you can see it on either my channel or on Halsey News. I did do a debate earlier this week with Ryan Dawson of Annie Neocon Report, and hopefully there will be a part two because he did have to conveniently leave at the end. But I did write this, and I'm calling it the Ryan Dawson Refund Guide Part 1. There will be more parts, whether or not there's another part to the debate. So please check that out. It will be in the description or I guess in the comments below. And it will primarily be, I guess, a resource for people who want to, really get to some of the actual base evidence of what happened on 9/11. I know my hair's a little screwed up, but not much I can do. So I'm working a lot on that. Obviously, the climate stuff, I've been unable to really keep working on it. I know that the past two stories that I've written that were published on Federalist were relating to Sunrise, and there's doubtless a lot more material to go through. So you can expect some more activity on that front, probably over the next month at a certain point, but I don't know yet. Next month's also going to be a little bit more sparse as well because of a number of religious holidays I have. So that's as far as I'm concerned. I hope you guys are still watching. Now, we can go and take a look at some of the stories that are really cropping up more and more. So let's go through a little sequence. Okay, the Biden-Ukraine story, the Biden-Trump-Ukraine story, is a classic case of people really deciding who they think is to blame, not based on what the law says, not based on what's best for the country, not based on who did what wrong, but based on their personal interests and their opinions. And that's really what's going on here. Now, the fact is that if you are really being objective and you look at the actions that Joe Biden took in order to remove a prosecutor in Ukraine in, I believe it was either 2015 or 2016, I don't know how you can look at Joe Biden as a clean candidate, even if you're a Democrat. I think if you're a Democrat right now, you are really in a pinch to find a candidate who exemplifies real principled, incorruptibility. Bernie Sanders doesn't count. Bernie Sanders did compromise and he yielded to Hillary Clinton, and so did Elizabeth Warren. Therefore, I think that we are heading towards a period where a lot of Democrats are going to be soul searching and trying to figure out who to support. There was a problem during the earlier part of the primary. I know I'm not really going specifically into a story right now. I'm just showing this screen because it shows a number of the issues. But we're going to get to a little bit of the polling. The Democratic primary at the beginning did contain a number of Democrats who possessed what you would call a typical centrist mentality. Delaney, Hickenlooper, they still have Steve Bullock is still running for some reason. You had even Swalwell, you could, I guess, consider a centrist. None of those took off because all of the enthusiasm in the Democratic Party is in the activist wing. It's in the activist wing. It's in the virtue signaler wing. So those two wings are fighting each other. The virtue signalers are the ones who backed Hillary Clinton, and they contain the majority of the media. And then you have the progressive wing that is still divided to some degree. Some of them still support Bernie Sanders. I guess a portion of them support Tulsi Gabbard, which I don't think really has a future. I'm sorry, but you can support her. I personally would consider her a better person than the other candidates, but you just have to accept that people who supported Hillary Clinton, who make up a massive portion of Democratic voters, are not going to get behind Tulsi Gabbard, who essentially flipped the bird to the DNC in order to prevent them from, or not to be complicit in them handing the 2016 primary to Hillary Clinton. And yeah, I think that some of the progressives are obviously still backing Sanders, but yeah, a lot of them have made peace with the fact that Elizabeth Warren is, for all intents and purposes, the establishment's choice for 2020. So that's the problem that they're going to be dealing with. You can see here's some of the polls. You can see Biden is actually behind Warren in the Quinnipiac poll and in the Economist YouGov poll. So those are two major ones that are and even this is the LA Times Berkeley poll. It shows Warren with a pretty big lead in California, and Biden is still leading in the South. Over in Georgia, he's still leading in Maryland, according to some of these polls. But in general, I would say Joe Biden is fading largely because he's not a coherent candidate. He was even caught on camera this weekend, or maybe it was on Monday, when somebody was asking why voters should choose him over Donald Trump. He's like, that's up to them to decide. So the guy's asking, well, don't you think you should try to convince them? And he's like, I know. I mean, they'll make up their minds. So no, I think Biden at the moment is trending downward. In fact, you can see it on the graph over here, and you see right here, Warren is trending upward, and Sanders is remaining in the same place. And I think Sanders has a lot of brand loyalty, but he doesn't have necessarily great brand growth, because there's a lot of voters who are Democrats who I would say still carry a grudge against him from 2016, whether rightly or wrongly. I personally don't like him at all, but that's the way it is. Some people are like that. I don't see really a reason why anyone would view Warren as necessarily better than Sanders at going up against Trump. I think Sanders is, for all that I beat up on him, the man is, I would say, more charismatic than Elizabeth Warren. And some of his ideas are a little more original, even though they're all bad. I guess that's something you could give him. Andrew Yang is kind of stuck at 3.3%, but for right now, he just needs to stay stable. The fact of the matter is, though, that Andrew Yang has been stagnating, and also he's been adapting to be part of the Democratic swamp. So he's not really criticizing their garbage on Russiagate. He's probably going to end up buying into the new Ukraine gate, which is pretty funny if you think about it. The idea that you have a president who's been accused of collaborating with Russia for 2 years, and suddenly people have flipped the script. The media has flipped the script, and suddenly he's collaborating, ironically, with Russia's worst enemy, Ukraine. Don't you think that's a little contradictory? So, yeah, that's that's the way it's going. And none of the candidates, apart from Gabbard, is not really making a big deal, and she's saying, well, this doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. But the other candidates are treating this like basically manna from heaven, even though it's not. They're basically being shit on from the sky, if anything. You're seeing some of these candidates it's pretty obviously they're going nowhere. Cory Booker, there was a story earlier in the week that he issued an email to supporters claiming that, well, if we don't raise $1.7 million by the end of the month, we might not be able to continue. Well, Cory, I don't think that that's a great source of motivation. A lot of people, by the way, I always find it funny that these candidates think, well, if you don't donate money to my campaign, we might not be able to save the world. When a lot of people, including myself, I'm not in great financial shape right now. We don't have money to donate to political candidates. If I'm going to donate money, I'll donate it to nature conservation or to some sort of, I do donate a nominal sum every month to the homeless from a group that went to one of my jobs and showcased their efforts. Why would I donate to political campaigns, especially in the primaries? I never did until 2016, and none of those candidates ended up winning. I think I donated to Gary Johnson one time. I donated to this guy, Tim Canova, and I was donating to the Larry Sharpe campaign in New York. So, it doesn't. I don't even know if I'm gonna contribute at all, unless for some reason it constitutes a statement. But yeah, there's very, very little movement right now for some of these centrist candidates. Delaney is still technically in the race, and so is Bullock. But those two are not going to be on the debate stage. You're going to see, now that Tulsi Gabbard did qualify for the debate in October, that's bad news for Kamala Harris. That's also bad news, I would say, for Tom Steyer. If they're on the same stage, if they put them on different stages, it comes to look like they're quarantining Tulsi Gabbard in order to make sure she does the least damage possible. Let's say they make a debate stage where it's Tulsi Gabbard, Amy Klobuchar, Julian Castro, Beto O'Rourke, and Cory Booker. Because I think I named 6 candidates, but let's say it's those 6 and maybe Andrew Yang. So what they're going to do is they're going to quarantine her and put bubble wrap around Biden, Warren, Sanders, and Buttigieg, okay, and possibly Harris. The people who are the reliable candidates. The reliable candidates are ones that'll do the bidding of the DNC, and Gabbard is the least likely to do that. They would much rather have a pig like Tom Steyer up on the stage than they would have someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who's a little bit more normal. Maybe I don't agree with most of her points of view, but she's a more honest candidate. She seems to be drifting further towards reality, which would seem a bad position to take in the Democratic Party. So, yeah, I don't believe that the next debate is going to be especially compelling unless you see Tulsi Gabbard put on the same stage as Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, which it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I don't even know if she's been on the same stage with Sanders. So we'll see. Other stories that are going on right now. Let's look back at the Real Clear Politics front page. I really do like the page. The impeachment battle. So we did discuss Ukraine and the idea that the Democrats would start to impeach a person based on a phone call to a foreign leader, in which the foreign leader raised the issue of a criminal probe of a U.S. politician, is laughable. Okay, but the fact is we have to take this seriously. And I know a lot of people will say, well, are you just trying to circle the wagons around Donald Trump? No, if there was evidence that Donald Trump had been trying to squeeze personal favors, monetary favors out of a foreign leader, that's a major problem. This doesn't look like it. Based on the accounts that I've heard, I do need to read this transcript, so I'm not going to give a full opinion, but it sounds a lot more like Donald Trump was having a business-like conversation with another foreign leader. And if people want to object to Zelensky and Trump talking about a real legal problem going on with Vice President Biden, which is really Biden's fault, then and then impeach him, well, okay, then really impeachment is to be used in order to protect the not the guilty, but to protect people who are suspected of corruption. That's what impeachment is for. If that's what you're going to use it for. I don't think that this is a good case for impeachment. You even have idiots who, for many years, they seem to be civil liberties advocates, like Justin Amash, and they're jumping on this and they're saying, well, this is proof that he's using his office as a way to persecute his opponents and things like that. Look, Justin Amash, if he knew his entire time serving during the Obama administration about a lot of these outrageous episodes of pay to play and corruption and all of that, and he's saying, well, essentially, now that Donald Trump is in office, those issues are really peripheral. We're not going to deal with them. Forget it. Donald Trump is the real threat, even though he's trying to address those issues. That shows the hollow nature of ideologues like Justin Amash. They're not really for the principle of civil liberties. I think that Joe Biden, his civil liberties are intact. He'll probably get excellent legal representation if a probe comes to pass. But you can't allow people to essentially go and do the things that he and Hunter Biden did, threatening to get a prosecutor fired and participating in a corrupt deal in Ukraine, and then claim, the real person that has to be impeached is the person who investigated it. I think it's wrong. And if you don't agree with me, then I don't know what the hell you believe in. This Israeli election, so you have a lot of people are very, very salty because for the second time in 1 year, this is why I think sometimes people should be glad that they live in a little bit more of a simple system here in the U.S. Maybe it's not that simple, but we never have had an election, not in the modern times. I think maybe it was the election of 1876 when Hayes defeated Tilden. So that was an unclear election, and there was a lot of corruption there. But for the most part, a presidential election comes off pretty clear. I guess don't forget Bush versus Gore. You also had Nixon versus Kennedy. But for the most part, at least the presidential election creates a clear tally as to who won, and then you install that president, and the Congress works different, on a different track. Over there, if you don't get a clear majority of parties that will select the same candidate, you can't form a government. So you still have the previous prime minister working in a caretaker capacity, which is what Netanyahu has been doing since at least, I believe it was March or April when the last election was. So Netanyahu this time wins even less votes. And this is really the problem here. I think that cobbling together coalitions and having to do the system the way they do over there and making the country beholden to special interests, which is what they do. There's a party over there there's two parties over there that are ultra-Orthodox religious. There's three parties that are united together that are Arab parties, Arab nationalists, or Arab socialists are one of the parties. And then there's the Arab religious nationalists. So those three are there. And then you also have, a more secular party, and then you have religious right-wing parties, and then you have two left-wing parties, and all of them want a little piece of the pie, and that's how you're supposed to form a government. I'm sorry, but the way it's looking right now, I think that Israel would have to have constitutional reform. And there's a lot of people who like to say, they brag, Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East. Well, first of all, that's not necessarily true. It's the more functional democracy compared to Lebanon and compared to I think Turkey is technically still a democracy, and I guess I'm at pains to think of any other ones that exist out there. But the fact is that having one of the only democracies in the Middle East is not exactly a point in their favor if they cannot reach a resolution on the leadership of the country through that democracy, right? And that's why I think they would need a constitutional reform. Maybe they need some sort of bicameral legislature. Maybe they need to separate the powers of the executive branch from the legislative branch. the prime minister. This is the way it happens in parliamentary democracies, like in Israel and like other ones. The prime minister is simply a member of the parliament who's been designated by a majority of the other members of parliament to serve as effectively the first among equals in a government, and he would appoint the ministers, or she would appoint them. In fact, Israel has had a female prime minister, but that system is very flawed if you cannot get a broad consensus for one main party. And the Likud party, which is Netanyahu's party, has gone through periods of famine and feast. Okay, back in the early 70s and thereabouts, when they were forming together, they really coagulated a lot of different movements that were a little different from each other, but they were united in the fact that they were opposing the ruling Socialist Labor Party, the Mapai Party, as it was called back at the time. As the years went on, the Likud grew, and then it would contract, and the corruption within the party would cause a lot of problems, and the public would rebel from time to time. But yeah, since Netanyahu took over in 2009, they've largely been unchallenged. But has the business of government really gotten along? Not really. Mostly what Netanyahu does is he talks about, Iran is about to get a nuclear weapon, and everything must be focused on stopping them from doing it. And meanwhile, other issues that have to do with the economy and the security in the southern part of the country and the health system and various other issues, those have to wait because of Iran. And I think that, with all due respect, and I don't have the answers. I don't think that any of the other candidates seem very interesting to me. And I can't vote there anyway anymore because I think you have to have established residency. But they really are showing that this is a generation where Netanyahu is succeeding due to a default lack of leadership from other people. And that's why he's technically still the most viable candidate, and he was awarded the right to form the next government. So I think that's about it for now. I'll talk to you guys later. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds.com, as well as Gab. I think, what's the other one? BitChute, Gab, Minds, and Subscribestar if you want to donate. All of those are at Chef Leopard, except for Gab, which is at Starscream85. And I'll talk to you guys later.